Good evening. Welcome. We're going to get started momentarily. It's just a moment after 7. I invite you to get some pizza in the back of the room. I had my piece, so thank you very much for folks for doing that. I'm going to ask the folks in the front of the room, starting with me, I'm Jane Weld, I'm the Assistant Town Manager, to introduce ourselves, and then we'll move into our presentation this evening. I want to thank you for your time on this cold evening. It's warm here, and once again, there's pizza, there's also water in the back of the room. Later on, when we have questions, if you would please come to the podium, so I won't be wandering around with a microphone and save everybody the aggravation. So please come to the podium, we can hear you here, and we will restate all questions for the folks at home or the folks in the room. Okay? Thank you. Joel. You're going to introduce yourself for the people.
Joel Bartman, the architect from BA+A.
I'm Mark Doxer. I'm a member of the Select Board here in town and the Select Board's representative on the Permanent Building Committee.
I'm Brian Ramatka. I'm with Turner Townsend Heery. We're the owner's project manager for this project.
Jim Sullivan, Recreation Administrator for the Town of Reading.
Jenna Wood, Community Services Director for the Town of Reading.
Chris Kowalewski, Elder and Human Services Administrator for the Town of Reading.
Will Valier, Veteran Service Officer for the Town of Reading.
Okay. Are you ready to go in the room?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Master Allen. On behalf of the Town of Reading, it's my pleasure to welcome you again to the Pleasant Street Center. I apologize, I'm under the weather tonight, so I cannot join in person, but it's an important meeting and I still wanted to be a big part of it. Are there any boards that need to call themselves to order if there's a quorum tonight? Select Board, Finance Committee, any other board?
Yes, the Permanent Building Committee, we'll call the January 28th Permanent Building Committee meeting to order. Roll call, John Coop. Yes. Nancy Zimlock.
Yes.
Mark Doxer.
Yes.
Nancy Toomey.
Yes.
And Pat Tompkins here. Thank you.
And I'll call the select board to order. Matt. Mark is here, and then Melissa's on Zoom.
Okay. Any other boards need to be called to order? Okay. Seeing none. Okay, so again, we're here tonight to discuss, again, a very important project, what we call the new RECAL, or Reading Center for Active Living. This is a community asset that will serve people of all ages. This is our second public forum. If you remember, we had one right before the holidays in December that was very well attended. And we actually have another one planned in March. So there's plenty of opportunity for public input, which is really something that we want. Many hours of hard work have brought us to this point. We look forward to sharing our plans with you tonight. And as I've said before many times, we really look forward to hearing your ideas, your feedback, so that we can continue to improve the project if there's improvements to be made. Right up until the end, we're interested in public feedback. So I know everybody introduced themselves tonight, but a bit repeating the program tonight. In order, you'll hear from Community Services Director Jenna Wood, Elder and Human Services Director Chris Kowalewski, our Recreation Director Jim Sullivan, our Veteran Services Director Will Valier, our architect Joel Bregman from EHAA is here, and also our Owner's Project Manager Brian Ramatka from Turner Townsend Heery, TTA. And I would like to also thank members of the Select Board, Finance Committee, Council on Aging, RECAL Building Committee, Permanent Building Committee, Reading 60 Plus for their attendance tonight. We couldn't do it without our dedicated volunteers. I'll go briefly through some slides. Some of them you've seen before. I just welcomed and introduced everybody. We have our vision statement here, and to spare my voice a little, I won't read it all to you, but you can see it on the screen. We want to foster health and wellness by promoting social interaction and strengthening the community, and we feel that this overriding vision is something that's carrying us through the project. And so it was important for us from the start to have a comprehensive vision and mission statement, and the mission statement is something I can show you next.
But something is obviously genuine.
Well, we went to guiding principles, but that's okay. We have a mission statement. We also have guiding principles that we have really led us through this whole process. We want to be age-friendly, and we want to be welcoming. We want to include designated space for recreation for our veterans. The center should be accessible, both inside and out. The center should promote social equity and maximize access. So this is sort of our guiding, between our guiding principles, our vision statement, and our mission statement. This is something that has led us through the entire process. Next slide, please. So a lot of people I've heard in the community say, well, this is something new. And it really isn't new. We've been working on this in some way, shape, or form since 2015, so 10 years, which is just about as long as I've been here in Reading. And I've been involved in a lot of facets of this process. If you remember, the MAPC, Metropolitan Area Planning Council, started with their economic development plan. UMass, the Institute came in and did a study back in 2017 that was very helpful to us. We decided to form a committee, and that became ReCalc, which met for several years to design what we have here today. We've gotten priorities from the Select Board. We used ARPA funds for feasibility, and the ReCalc and Select Board recommended that unanimously, I think, that we would pursue Simon's Way, an area in town that a lot of people know that's vacant town, that the vacant town land that the town owns, to build a center there. We had 2 other sites. We went through a pretty rigorous vetting process through the last year or so, and that was the preferred site by ReCalc, the Select Board members. So that brings us to this very important point right now. We are now in 2025, and we are ready. We have schematic designs coming, costing, and we are ready to go to town meeting in May, and also schedule a community vote in May. So that will be a vote of the voters to vote on the whole process. So that is a pretty critical juncture where we are today. We'll go to the next slide. Public outreach. As I stated back in December, we had our first public outreach session, very well attended. We talked about the history, the ReCalc, the design, and the Reading capital projects. Here we are tonight at the Public Forum 2, and then we're going to have a public forum, I believe it's at the library. It's going to be in March. We also have some mini meetings, lunch and learns and coffee talk planned as well. So that's our public outreach campaign. There they are right there. The lunch and learn is actually later this week, and the coffee chat is in March as well. So the agenda tonight, as we stated a little bit previously, we've introduced the project. We'll give a little bit of an overview, understanding the function and operation of the proposed ReCalc facility. We'll have a design update as to where we stand today. We've got some really very interesting graphics to show you tonight. Understanding project costs. Obviously, that's a big part of this, how much this is going to cost the taxpayers. And how to get involved. A lot of people will be involved in the center. It's going to be rebuilding in Reading and have a lot of nice programs. So how can you get involved? And at the end, we'll have some time for Q&A as well. Thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to Jenna now, who's going to talk about community services and some of the things that she does for the center, and then we'll go through the rest of the agenda. Thank you for accommodating me on Zoom. My voice just about held up, so I'll be back later to answer any questions.
Thank you, Matt. I'm also going to use the mic because I'm a little under the weather as well, so I don't know how much I'll be able to project. So thank you all for coming in person and on Zoom, and anyone who decides to watch this later on. Thank you for being engaged in the project and taking the time to learn about a potential really great community asset. So many thanks for just being engaged and a part of the process. So I've had a unique perspective in this project. I've been here for about 13 years and I started in recreation. And then in 2021, I became the Community Services Director. So I really dived into Elder and Human Services more and with our Veteran Services Division. And what I can tell you is while everything is vastly different in a lot of ways in all of these divisions, they do have a lot of commonalities in a lot of ways that they service the community that are super impactful and collaborative. And these divisions, as you can see in our mission statement and vision statement, are Elder and Human Services led by Chris on my right, Veteran Services led by Will, also to my far right, and Jim Sullivan to my left. So these divisions not only run community programs, but they offer vital social services to our community. We'll make sure that veterans get their Chapter 115 benefits and refers to the VA hospitals and to various resources around the state. Same thing with our Elder and Human Services case manager. And not only do they serve the 60-plus population, but they serve the community as a whole. Same thing with recreation. All of these divisions oversee a tremendous amount of the 60-plus population, and a lot of people don't realize that. So Elder and Human Services interacts with over 10,000 interactions at the center, but 2,000 unique participants per year. Veteran Services, I realized that my number was wrong. Will told me today that he has received a 33% increase in veterans this past year and services over 400 veterans, and 50% of those veterans are 60 plus. And recreation also services over 400 of the 60 plus population. So we see all of these different variations of these divisions who serve not only the 60 plus population, but all members of our community. And we all collaborate so well together. And we feel as a staff that we're more powerful and more impactful in one space. And that's what we're really trying to cultivate in this Recal Center. So I'm going to move to the next slide. So we kind of came up with this phrase, thoughtfully bridging generations. Obviously, this started off, and we want the 60-plus population to have a better facility. The facility that we're in has several shortcomings that Chris will talk about. And through this process, we've realized that there's different variations of what we hear from the 60-plus community. We hear from the folks who currently come to the center that they're nervous about change and they want a space where they can still go and hang out with their friends and not be bothered. And we understand that. And so that's why we created our mission statement and said, there's going to be designated spaces for you. And we've been working hand in hand with the Council on Aging and staff members and different stakeholders to ensure that that happens in this building. We're coming up with an operations plan with a private consultant to make sure that this is valued and that our 60-plus population does have the resources and the program space that they need. But we also know that we're missing a demographic demographic of the 60-plus population. We have over 7,500 seniors in our population. We're serving about 2,000 here at the current center. And we're missing a certain demographic of senior that we think, well, maybe there's a stigma associated with the senior center that we're hearing. And that folks who are even in their 70s or 80s would never step foot in a senior center. And that's unfortunate because I come here all the time, and Chris will talk about it. There's people in here dancing away, having a great time, and for anyone who has that in their head, it's unfortunate. But this space that we're creating is a space that will open up those avenues and break down any stigmas related to age, and any age. The 60 plus and the younger kids and the middle-aged people. And you know, it's a really inclusive space, and that's what we're creating here, and you can see this on the slide, all these different ways that the center is going to bring us all together. So we've been sharing a lot of different articles with each other on the project team. I find it pretty cool, like whenever we see something happen in a different town, whether it's a senior center or something that aligns a little bit more with like a community center or a Reading center or a center for active living. There's a bunch of different ways you can look at it. But whenever we see a cool article or something impactful that resonates with us, we share it with each other in an email, and it'll also be on our FAQ section coming up that we updated today, by the way, if anyone wants to go on the website. But a really impactful thing that was shared by, I think it was Mark Doxer over here. He sent us this really awesome U.S. Surgeon General's advisory, and it's about the epidemic of loneliness and isolation. And we were like, wow, that really backs up what we're trying to do here in this center. And this Surgeon General, he was the 19th and 21st Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy. And in 2014, he started off on this tour of the United States and was interviewing with all different people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, of different ages. And he realized that there was a commonality here, that all of these people had been feeling lonely and isolated in their lives. And that's what this center will help. It's a 60 plus population, but it's a young male in their 20s. You know, it's a child who's struggling with their identity. It's various ways that the center can service someone who's feeling isolated and alone. And I thought that was really, really powerful. So I wanted to share a couple quotes. So I can't really see them on here. Hold on. That's right side of myself. Social connection, the structure, function, and quality of our relationships with others, is a critical and underappreciated contributor to individual and population health, community safety, resilience, and prosperity. The lack of social connection can have significant economic costs to individuals, communities, and society. Social isolation among older adults alone accounts for an estimated $6.7 billion in excess Medicare spending annually. Loneliness and isolation are associated with lower academic achievement, worse performance at work. In the U.S., stress-related absenteeism attributed to loneliness costs employers an estimated $154 billion annually. The impact of social connection not only affects individuals, but also the communities that they live in. And just another powerful statistic from this study about the lack of social connection. I found this graph to be very eye-opening, that lacking social connection is worse than smoking 15 cigarettes daily, drinking 6 alcoholic drinks daily, physical inactivity, obesity, and air pollution. So, and lastly, ironically enough, I'm reading through this 80-something page study. And pillar number 1, of the 6 pillars to advance social connection is ironically what we're trying to create here. So pillar number 1 is strengthen social infrastructure in local communities. Design the built environment to promote social connection. Establish and scale community connection programs. Invest in local institutions that bring people together. Investing in local communities and in social infrastructure will fall short if access to the benefits is limited to only some groups. Equitable access to social infrastructure for all groups, including those most at risk for social disconnection, is foundational to building a connected national and global community and is essential to the pillar's success. So with all that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Jim Sullivan in Recreation, and the 3 divisions are going to talk about their current programming, their shortcomings, and how they think that they can really be impactful in this ReCal building. So Jim, why don't you go?
I think we're jumping ahead, and then Chris was going to say,
Oh,
You skipped me.
sorry.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Kowaleski, Elder and Human Services Administrator for the town of Reading. I am located here at the Pleasant Street Center. My office is upstairs, right outside the bathrooms, if you could walk around the building. And I have no door. Jenna really summed it up really well here over the past few minutes. It really gives you an idea of what we're facing with older adults, not just in Reading, but across the country as well. You know, something to think about is we serve a lot of ages out of this facility. You know, one of our primary focus is ages 60, but we go up to, so far, 102. We have quite a few people over 100 years old that still come to the center here, which is pretty amazing. And it really shows how things are changing and how folks are really living longer. And it's an important focus to stay on. But with that, you know, as Jenna was mentioning, loneliness, and there's a lot of dynamics and there's a lot of things that, you know, a lot of folks need help with, and it's important that we're here for them. Now, with that said, as you can see on the first slide, you know, we have really grown over the past couple years. Last year, I go by fiscal year, July 1st to June 30th, we had just under 38,000 interactions. That's a lot. Now, that is out of 2,000. So we have, I would say 2,000 plus. I try really hard to keep very close, good statistics. So I'm just going to say 2,000 plus people. We've had almost 38,000 interactions with them. And my expectation is that will continue to keep growing. You know, 2,000, and I just got this stat. We have 7,647 older adults 60 plus in Reading. That is the stat I just pulled today. So if you think about it, we're having 38,000 interactions with about 2,000, and we're going to continue to increase that number. And our hope is to be able to reach more and more older adults in town. And like Jenna had summed up, a couple of the most important things that we focus on, and thanks to the staff here and Carrie, our case manager, mental health, loneliness, isolation. Very important focus. And it's very difficult, but it's very important. And we don't reach as many as we should be. And the space really limits us from being able to do that. We try our best. You know, but it's hard because in this building, as you can see, we're in the biggest room that we have in this building. And I hate saying it, but I have to limit activities. Our bigger, if you go to the next slide, I think it's on the next one. You know, our bigger events, we have 30 plus people on the wait list. You know, those are people that may be lonely, maybe at home. That we would love to have. We would love to have them here and participating. You know, we try our best to get people on a wait list on one event. We try to get them on in the next one. But our wait lists are growing. People are really enjoying what we're doing here. And with the space, as you can read down through here, you know, if you've walked through this building at the Pleasant Street Center, it's easy to see. You know, we have a staff of about 7 here. You know, literally I'm in a hallway upstairs. I'm right outside the bathrooms. If you look at my office, it goes right through to the emergency door. We don't have a bathroom on the first floor here. Our receptionist right here, Linda, our clerk, imagine trying to make phone calls and do work at that desk while you have 60 people doing an activity in here. We do about 1,000 phone calls a month, so which comes to about every 8 to 9 minutes, she's getting a phone call. And we have to compete with activities going on in this room, and it makes it very challenging. You know, as I said, no bathrooms on the first floor. We only have 2 ADA handicap parking spots right out front here. You know, the ramp outside from the lower parking lot. You know, if you're in a wheelchair, if you have, you know, mobility issues, it makes it very difficult. You know, we still utilize this building, and we will continue to still utilize this building to its fullest potential. But there's a lot of challenges, and you can just read down through there, cramped spaces, offices and program space. You know, it's very easy if you walk around to see the challenges that we face. Next slide. This is a list of activities and programs that we're doing. This is not everything we do. I ran out of space. But over the past 2 years, I started in August of 2022, shortly after the pandemic, and we were back here full time, and we hit the ground running. And we don't plan on slowing down. We have really ramped up our programming. A lot of this was due to ARPA funding, and we were really grateful for that. But this also couldn't have been done with the support of the town, the select board, the administration, Jenna, Jane and Matt, you know, the select board again. We have been working really hard. The staff has, you know, hasn't let up, and we have been growing nonstop. We try to fill this building and utilize it to its fullest capacity, and we hope to be able to do that in the same, and plan to do that if we get a new building as well. And like I said, this is only some of the many things that we do, and people sign up for. You know, due to the limitations of this building, we struggle reaching a larger portion of the 60-plus population, as I originally mentioned earlier. More space designated to specific activities will help us grow and reach more older adults in various interests and abilities. You know, and that's something that we have to think about. You know, think about the wide variety from 60 to 102. We have people who can really move, and they can dance, and they do. They have a fantastic time in here. You know, 6-year-olds, line dancing, Zumba, they're moving. We have people who have lower mobility, and we respect and we try to serve them all equally. And it's very important that we do, and we try it. But again, our limitations limit us to how many folks that we can really reach in this town. With the new building, you know, there's a lot of programs that we could be offering, and a lot of programs that, you know, we could be working jointly with recreation. You know, pickleball. There's a lot of 60-plus-year-olds, even people under 60. We could be playing pickleball, bocce, corn. You can just go down this list, and this is just some of them. We also like to think outside the box. You know, what are the things that, you know, we're moving forward in time here. What are things? Robotics, engineering. There are so many older adults in this town that have skills, that amazing skills that we could utilize, and it would be wonderful to be able to do that. You know, how many engineers do we have in this town? Nurses, healthcare workers, anyone who's 60 plus. You know, it would be amazing and wonderful to be able to tap into their strengths and skills and, you know, continue to bring them into our community. So those are just some on this chart right here, you know, things that we could possibly be doing. Do I have one more slide? Nope, that's it. But it really is. Our space is limiting who we can reach, and it's important so we can continue to focus providing the services that we need. Thank you. I'm going to hand it off to Jim.
Great job, Chris. I don't know if I'll be as long as him, but I will do my best to do as good as he did. My name is Jim Sullivan. I'm the Recreation Administrator for the town of Reading. I've been in this position for 2 years. I'm going to give you a quick little background on where I came from. I think it's important because I think it ties into what this project is leaning towards. I started my career here in 2007 to 2012. I was a program coordinator for the Recreation Division. Jenna, who sat next to me, was actually my summer intern when she was in college. And she has climbed the ranks very nicely. And I'm going to take a little credit for that. Maybe I helped out, but she is my boss, so I'm going to speak very highly of her. So I was here for 5 years, and then I went to the town of Marblehead. When I went to Marblehead, they had a community center. The community center was a joint space with the Recreation Division, as well as the Elder Services. The way it was set up, we had our own little wing on the right side, Elder Services was on the left side. Predominantly, they held the morning hours Monday through Friday, where they were running programming from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. After that, we'd work with them and schedule with them what programs they had at night, what they didn't have at night, and what spaces were available. That's where I came in, and I would try to fill up all those spaces with whether it was young adults recreation, senior recreation, adolescents, middle school. My job is to fill that space. And I think that's very important for this project, is that we maximize every square foot of this building if it is to move forward. So I have some numbers. A lot of people think of recreation and sometimes they're like, I don't know what you do. We do a lot. We do more than pickleball, we do more than dodgeball. This past year, I didn't go fiscal year, I went January 1 to December 31st. We serviced 6,645 registrations. When you look at our bread and butter, obviously it is in the youth demographic, which is, I'd say, 0 to 14. But then you look at the other numbers, you will see that we do have a high amount of seniors that are participating in programs, but we're also missing some of the young adults. I look at this number and I say, if we get these folks in the doors at a community center like this, they're going to continue to stay there. They're there at 20, they're at 30, 40, 50, 60, and it's just going to help with, like Jen said, the isolation and not being around folks. So I think these numbers kind of show where we are, but I think it's telling where we need to be as well. You can go to the next slide. I put the list of the majority of our programs that we have. Currently, we have 276 youth programs. It's anything from wrestling, basketball, karate, flag football, engineering, robotics, yoga. I'm not going to read off all these. We also have 95 adult programs that we in this past year. Youth and adult programs, that's more of our, what I call our inclusion with the intergenerational programs. We had 18 programs, and a lot of those events were held here. And if you've attended them, they have been a blast. We are also starting to dive into the field of adaptive and therapeutic recreation. This past year, we ran 3 programs. The last 2 months, we've already run 2, and that's working with the special ed department, as well as the YMCA, using ARPA funds to get some of these kids out in the community that haven't had that opportunity as well. So a lot of programs we do. What I'm going to talk about now is kind of the shortfalls we have by running some of these programs, the limitations we have as well. So out of all those programs that we ran, 392, 229 take place off-site in a school building. We have a wonderful facilities department here, very fortunate. They provide a space, but it does have its challenges as well. We utilize a lot of our fields when they are available, but those have challenges as well. We have a very active athletic community. The high schools do utilize a lot of the fields till 7 o'clock, 7:30, so that does limit opportunities for us to get out on these turf fields as well as grass fields. Off-site, we do work with some businesses where our programs run directly at their sites as well. We have 36 of those. We actually ran a lot of programs here this year, 24, compared to some of the past years where we weren't really utilizing the space, but we work with Chris. He lets us know when space is available, and we try to capitalize on it as well. We do utilize Materia Cabin. So that's basically how the rec department functions without really having our own space. Our offices are in Town Hall. We're in the basement level as well. It's shared space, it's cubicles. It can make it difficult to have conversations that should be done behind some closed doors at sometimes, but we are recreation and we are always kind of adapting to what we need to do to get the job done. Our limitations. No dedicated indoor program space for recreation. With the school department, like I said, facilities has been amazing. We do have strict deadlines. So we have to pre-plan, typically 3 months to 5 months in advance to secure space. They do rent out to other groups as well, so we need to lock in our space and hope that we can fill programs as well. We've had instances where we've had programs that have taken off. We'd love to offer more, but we have no space to do that. Community education in the elementary schools pretty much are off limits until 6 p.m. That window from 3 to 6 is a very crucial programming time. Kids get out of school, they might go downtown, so we're looking to try to fill those as well, just to keep the kids active and busy throughout the day. As I mentioned, high school sports are in a lot of the larger gymnasiums that we utilize. Typically then they're till 7 or 7:30 Monday through Friday, as well as on weekends for games. We do utilize classroom space. It's not ideal. We try to stay away from that. Run into issues where teachers typically don't want to give up their classroom. I fully understand that. We're in libraries. There's instances where things will go missing, whether one of our instructors took it or a kid took it. Typically it falls on us and we end up reimbursing anyone for items that are lost or damaged. The custodians, they're tasked with unlocking doors. They do have a schedule where they know when we're coming in or not. They do unlock the doors for the start of the program. For safety reasons, they are locking them after, so if someone is arriving late, it's difficult sometimes to get in as well. We don't have any staff on site. It makes it challenging when you have a school that you haven't been to and you signed up for a yoga class and it's in a multi-purpose room. You show up and then you end up wandering around hallways unless the instructor finds you or we send a staff there, which we typically have to do. So we have staff sometimes working at 7 o'clock at night to show folks where to go for the first class. Really don't have many opportunities for morning or pre-K programming during the week because we don't have space. There is a need for that, whether it's the Guardian Me classes and it's music, Mommy and Me, things like that. Indoor playground opportunities for folks who have kids are at home. So we're missing that because we don't have our own space. During the summer, it's really difficult to get in schools. The custodians do a great job working in there, and they're there till typically 5 o'clock each day, but after 5 o'clock in the summer, we're usually kicked out of schools. Currently, we pay about $40,000 per year that go directly to paying for the custodian services that we do utilize. Benefits of recreation retail. Like Janet talked about, it fosters the community for all, for the young adults, for the seniors, for everybody. We need to maximize the use of this building space, I think, which is very important. Recreation, we are on a revolving fund. We do turn back money to the town with all of our programming offerings every year. So we plan on doing that, I think even more so than what we've done over the last 2 years that I've been here. It'll provide a central location that will have rooms that are made for recreation. We've had arts and craft programs, we've had art programs, and rooms that don't even have a sink. It makes it very difficult to entice anyone to come into our community and run these programs. As I said earlier, provide additional programs that we can't do during the peak hours, which is for the youth, I'd say 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., the adults, 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Right now, a lot of our youth are in those gyms. Once the high school gets out, it's travel basketball. We try to get pickleball in the gym as well, in the winter months as well when they can't get outside. In a big part, like we said, we have a great team here. Work with Chris, being able to support elder services as well as veteran services. Will and I are talking today. We got to figure out how to get them the van for an upcoming trip. So we're always working together, and we work really well together. And I think that's a big part of it. We have a great team. Recreation isn't going to come in there and say, seniors, we're coming, we're taking over everything. We understand that you need a space. I think we are an asset. I think we need to be in this building just to help pay for this building as well, and to utilize it, whether it's through rentals or more programming directly through us. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, going to hand it over to Will, our Veteran Services Officer.
Good job, Jim. Tough act to follow. I'm Will Valier. I'm your Veteran Service Officer of the town of Reading. And what I used to do prior to coming here, I was the Transition Assistance Advisor over at the Massachusetts National Guard headquarters, helping our veterans transition off of active duty back into the civilian world. So I did a lot with my returning soldiers from OIF and all of the conflicts that we've put them in. Mostly getting them back to work in the civilian capacity, and sometimes that transition is not always as smooth as it should be. And as the Veteran Service Officer, when this position came available, I decided that that's something that I'd like to continue to do. I work with the Middlesex Veterans Treatment Program over at the Framingham District Court as the mentor coordinator, working with justice-involved veterans who came in contact with our law enforcement officers and ended up in their judicial system, and helping them reintegrate into society and live a productive life. Since I've been here, I came aboard in 2022 June, and right now, last year in 2024, I had over 445 contacts with veterans and their spouses and dependents, talking and coming in, finding out what their benefits are and what I could do for them. I've had veterans come in and just say, hey, what do you do? I had a firefighter come in from Somerville and said, hey, I'd like to be a veteran service officer. I told them, well, listen, you're going to take a heck of a pay cut if you're going to go from fire services to being the veteran service officer. So think twice before you want to leave your firefighter service. But last year, again, I had a 33% increase in my walk-in. So I'm constantly meeting with people. I don't get a chance to get out of the office as much as I'd like to, because I know that I have shut-in veterans who are at home. And I'd like to go out and be able to visit with them, but it's hard to do when it's a one-man operation. So when I leave the office, the telephone is transferred to the cell phone, and it does ring, and I do pick it up, which is rather inconvenient if I'm involved in a conversation with a veteran who is in need of my attention and talking to them about what they do. So last year, because I'm a National Service Officer, I'm fully accredited by the Office of General Counsel for the Veterans Administration. I generated over $100,000 in federal VA benefits to veterans and their surviving spouses. I run the Memorial Day and Veterans Day ceremonies. I process the Chapter 115 public assistance programs to eligible veterans and their dependents. VA healthcare applications assistance, people coming in that have never gotten involved with the VA healthcare system. I help them with their application, take that application directly over to the Bedford VA, drop it off to the eligibility, and within a day, they're getting a call from the VA. Grave markers, I do grave markers to mark the graves, disability for service and non-service connected disability, VA home loans, educational assistance, death benefits, discharge copies, and requests for replacement. So if you have a veteran who doesn't have a copy of their DD-214 and they enlisted in Massachusetts or they joined the military here in Massachusetts, I am able to get them a copy of their DD-214. So they don't have to go off to the National Archives looking for their DD-214. So I run the monthly scuttlebutt meetups upstairs on the second floor, which is a pretty good turnout. Some of my veterans have gone to other communities because they have a little bit more veteran-centric community centers, so that they're a little bit larger. So I've asked a couple of my veterans, how come well, I've got a little bit more activity going over in this community. I said, well, okay, well, don't forget that you belong to Reading and always could come and see me and we can talk. One of the most important things with the community center is where our veterans are able to come together and have that camaraderie. It is a special place. If you've never been in the military, I can honestly tell you that you are truly missing something, because I still have contacts with people that I served with over 30 years ago. Okay. So central location, a strategically located community center will reduce the travel barriers, making it easier for veterans from across the areas to visit. ADA compliance, modern facilities will accommodate veterans with mobility challenges through wheelchair ramps, elevators, and ergonomic designs. Ample parking, that's one of my complaints is I couldn't park out in the parking lot. I had to park across the street, and the guy can't get across the street because people won't stop for the crosswalk sign sometimes. So it's difficult. VSD will have a dedicated private functional office to conduct consultation, process paperwork, and hold confidential meetings. I have an office. My door closes very rarely, but when it does, it means I'm talking to a veteran about some very personal and specific needs that they have. All right. I am down in the basement, which, as long as it's not raining and not heavy rain for an extended period of time, I don't have water in my office, but sometimes that's not happening. Collaboration with other divisions by co-locating with other community services such as employment agencies, healthcare resources, and recreational facilities. VESD can offer comprehensive support. Community programs veterans can easily access workshops, fitness programs, and social events offered at the center, reducing isolation and fostering camaraderie. And again, isolation, as you heard from Mark Doxer, is one of our leading killers of our older senior veterans that I come in contact with because they're isolated. And I don't like to see that happen. So. Family support facilities can include family-friendly spaces, encouraging the veterans and their families to engage in supportive programs and events. One of the most important things that I did, and as a retired command sergeant major, is always interact with the families and make sure that they were involved and that what their soldier was up to and where they were going, and just to the best of my ability to keep them informed through my family support programs that we ran. The Reading Center for Active Living will provide for a welcoming environment where veterans of all ages feel valued and connected. Veterans-only spaces provided will allow for privacy when needed, integration with the community. Shared spaces allow for veterans to interact with other members of the community, promoting mutual understanding and respect. The VSD can use event space for Veterans Day celebrations, memorial ceremonies, and community outreach. And that's one of the most important things, because when it rains on Memorial Day, I'm still outside in the rain. And those that will show up in the rain, they're limited. I'd like to be able to run and say, okay, I'm predicted for rain, so I'm going to change it to an inside location. And that new Center for Active Living would allow me that opportunity to do that without having to coordinate with the high school or any place else to open up there and have a janitor open up the building, because I would be able to open it up myself, go in and set up for the day's events and programs. So one of those important things to think about when you look at this as a beneficial to the community as a whole and to my Reading veterans. My veterans are really important part of the world and the community, because they're less than 1% of the total population that today have raised their right hand to do things that most won't. And so I'm always a veteran-centered kind of guy. You'll see me engage with most veterans, and that's what I do, because that's my life. That's what I am. I am a veteran. I am a disabled veteran. And I think that we owe it to my veteran community and its community as a whole to look at this as an adventure and as an investment in the community as a whole. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. So I'm just going to kind of summarize everything, and before I do that, I just want to thank the Permanent Building Committee specifically for all of their hard work in taking on this project for us. The amount of expertise on this committee is just insane, and I've been learning so much being a part of the process. And I wanted to say that before I said the next thing, because the Center for Active Living is more than just a construction project, and I say that with respect to what you all are doing, that's why. It's a commitment to the town to offer programs and services that are really valued and needed, as you saw from all of the staff tonight, and this is just a blip of all of the services that they're offering to the community. We have over 9,000 individuals and families that participate in these community programs and social services in our community. We've heard from other centers that have built new centers that they receive around a 70 to 110% increase in participation. So if we look at the number of people that we're currently serving in community services, and we apply that to our own community, we'll see a 58 to 72% of our total population using this building. That's pretty powerful. So they'll be accessing the building and the resources that we're providing. So with the rising demand for our services that's evidenced, as well as the rapidly growing 60-plus community, the project ensures that all members in the town of Reading have access to the resources, facilities, and community connection they need to thrive. By placing this team of people in the heart of a modern and accessible, inclusive community hub, we create a space that not only meets the immediate needs, but also fosters long-term growth, collaboration, and integration. This project is a crucial investment for a successful and happy shared future. So we thought that it would be really great if we all talked, because all of what we do impacts the design, and we've had a lot of really great opportunities to meet with the Permanent Building Committee, and even had a work group spearheaded with the design that the Council on Aging was involved in. Nancy Toomey, the assistant chair of the Permanent Building Committee, was on, and they all really listened to the needs of all different segments of the population, and were really thoughtful in navigating this design. So I'm going to hand it off now, I believe, to Joel to go a little bit more into the design.
Thank you. We're here to explain, but also to get feedback, and I will say all these opportunities that you've heard about the building, it's great to come in last, because now our job is to accommodate them in all the other presentations we've gone first and explain how we've done them without having the benefit of hearing from the staff. The comments are good or bad. The bad ones really help us to make the building better. They challenge us. They challenge the group, they challenge all the assumptions. Assumptions are a bad term, so it makes us avoid preconceptions and assumptions. So anything you have to offer, please do. Is this working, or do I need to ask you to click?
Nope, it works out.
All right. So this is an overall site plan of the project. It shows really in master plan the whole development along Simmons Way, which turns into Range Road at the entry to Burbank Arena. So we have Range Road that comes on and keeps running up to the Reading Rifle Range at the end of that road. Here you have the building, the retail building. You have parking, and the master plan shows Burbank Arena and the proposed pickleball. Pickleball is not part of this project, but it needs to be shown so that we can have an integrated site plan, we can have integrated stormwater management, integrated conservation commission, integrated wetland management. All those things are integrated between the different projects. I don't think you could have a more wonderful opportunity with the ice rink, the community center, pickleball, the fields on the other side, and then this wetland area that's going to have trails in it and paths, and be a wonderful recreation opportunity for the town. What's really nice about the project is you come in off a Range Road into a parking lot. There are 90 spaces, but right off at the entry is a drop-off. So if you want to drop your spouse off, if someone's mobility challenged, they can get dropped off here, go right into the building. You can continue on and park your car and then come back. So it's very convenient access, and it's very private access. There's not a lot of traffic on Range Road. There's a separate way in and out, which makes it easy for first responders as well as for daily traffic folks. The 90 spaces are just for recal. They're not for the pickleball courts. Pickleball court parking is across the street at the upper end of the site going in behind Burbank Arena. So you don't have to worry about your 90 spaces. And why do we have 90 spaces? Clear usage charts of the building, how many people are in the building, plus how many staff are in the building to be served. Some people said, well, could you make the parking lot smaller and park across the street? Well, we have an agreement or the town has an agreement in principle to share parking for peak events, but you don't want to have your everyday parking on the other side of the road that has to traverse the grass area coming into the building. We really want to get within 100 feet of the front door, a good 50% of the parking for the building. So this is a view looking at it from coming into the site. As I mentioned, there's a drop-off right here. Coming in off of Range Road, there's a drop-off and the main entry right there. Very convenient. You can get in a minute. There's a covered porte-cochere, so if you're in a wheelchair or you have a challenge and it's just rainy day, you can go in underneath the cover and get right into the building. This is a straight-on shot of the building, which sort of explains how the function of it works. A Center for Active Living, by definition, is senior-centric in part. A portion of the building is dedicated to senior services and has an emphasis on the servicing of senior activities, but it accommodates other programs. So what we did is we divided the building into halves. At the lobby, on one side are those senior-centric and dedicated senior spaces, which are all on the ground floor, convenient and accessed. On the other side are the spaces that may be shared. The seniors will use them during the day, but say at night, there's a gym in the back, there's a walking track, there's a multi-purpose room that can be used by various groups up until whatever time you want to have an event at night. So the building sort of works this way, and it keeps that sort of public traffic at one end of the building separate from the other end of the building. In fact, at night, you don't even have to worry about recreation folks coming in this door. There's another door down here. They'll come in, they have their own bathrooms, they can go to the gym, play basketball, get back out to the car, and you don't have to worry about, as Jim said, someone taking something out of a room or messing up the space. So it's a really, I think it's the most exciting building, and it's the best Center for Active Living I worked on. I shouldn't be sounding like that at the meeting, but I want you to be proud of what it is, and that comes out of this workshop activity. The building really has, it's a interesting site with the wetlands, and it's a beautiful site with the natural environment. There's a real emphasis on connecting the two ends of the building, the gym end, and this is the senior center lounge end, to the outside. So the building really opens up at two ends of itself, and when you see the plan, you really can't tell where the inside stops and the outside begins, and that's really the intent of integrating the building and the site here. And this is sort of an overall view from the air. If you're a bird, here's that outdoor terrace. This is the senior lounge, senior game room, senior center. Activities are on the second floor as well. You can see the different roofs. It's a 28,000 square foot building on 2 levels, but it has 4 different roofs, so it's designed to look more as an assembly of smaller buildings in one large community center structure. So this is the first floor, and since it's closest to my hand, this end of the building is what I was saying. You can't really tell what's inside and what's outside, and that's on purpose. We want the senior lounge, the senior game rooms, all those things that are private, dedicated, and special for the seniors to have their own space, and then to have an enjoyable outdoor relationship for outdoor games, outdoor patio space, etc. This is that entry that I mentioned. It's in the middle of the building. The center, the senior, the elder services offices are here. Right when you come in, they have easy access if you need to see any one of the staff to the front. You come in from the front, and then this is the dedicated senior space. You come in the front, that's the entry to the multi-purpose room, and then this way is the entry to the gym. I'm sorry, I was looking for the second floor. The second floor lines up with the first floor. You have 2 program rooms, 2 additional program rooms on the second floor. There's some offices here. There are 2 recreation offices, so it's not all recreation. There's a billiard room, that's for seniors. maybe kids after school, but that's a destination location. You don't have to put that in the front door. People know they're coming to play pool, so you can put that in a remote portion of the building, and people will come and get to it. And I guarantee you that'll be filled with men, veterans, others using that. People always say, why do you put the billiard room in? And they go to look at one of our senior centers, and they say, we need the billiard room. The Veterans Lounge, it's not just the Veterans Office, but we're talking about a space for veterans to gather and talk. They have their own suite that's big enough for a table, big enough to have an administrator if you get one in the future. They have a conference area where they can get together and congregate privately. And if you want to have a back door to get in, you can get in there, or you can get in through this main entry here that's controlled. The idea is that recreation and the veterans can be accessed right off of the elevator or the stair from the middle of the building. They don't have to come in to areas where you might be playing games, you might be doing learning activities or other program spaces for seniors. The other thing that's nice about the veterans is they can also share a conference room with recreation staff, elder service staff, council on aging. There's a common conference room here that'll seat 13 or 15 folks, and that's really helpful if you want to have a large. You can see the synergy that develops. Recreation, veterans, elder services, they can all share some of these common areas. The synergy of a building is when you put common programs into the same building, you increase the efficiency of the building by 40%. In other words, if I had to solve recreation in one building, elder services in another building, veteran services someplace else, and other programs, you duplicate restrooms, bathrooms, circulation, all those things, elevators, stairs. It's an efficient operation to put these programs together. You come in as a senior, right away on the left is the entry greeter. We talked about wanting great data. Here's your data for my senior center. You can't get into the building or pass by it without seeing it and signing in and making sure that you get credit for it, because a lot of grants are available based on the numbers of people that sign in right there. Right here is that entry to the multipurpose room. So right from the start, you can either peel off, go to the multipurpose room. You can see at the end of that hallway what the day's activities are. You can see where you should go for those activities. You can see the gym, and it's cut off the top, but you can also see the second floor. If you're a veteran, you can see that there's a sign right on the left corner, Veterans Office, Recreation Office. I go to that TV, and I want to see what's on today's events. It's to my back right here, and now I'm lined up beautifully in the building, looking right down at the senior lounge. It's visible, it's accessible, but it's private. It's not in the middle of the space. It's really a dedicated senior space, and it opens to that outdoor space. Very simple circulation system. Here's the end of that corridor. That's the TV that has the day-to-day activities. I walk down here, coffee station, grab a coffee, sit in the lounge. 1,000 square feet of lounge space. A second lounge on the other side of that, so you can have two different kinds of spaces. Maybe some co-working, as was mentioned, that, seniors may be working, they might want to come in here and do an activity. I love this room. This is one of the loudest rooms in the building, the Mahjong room, the Mahjong room. Card tables, bridge, all sorts of games that are tabletop games. There's seats, 5 different tables here, so you get 20 people. But on the other side of me, there's a door that opens, and you can seat another 20 on the other side of that wall if you want. And if you have an even bigger event, you can go upstairs to one of those program rooms for a special event. Again, this room opens up to the patio, so in the summertime you can take advantage of that space. The multipurpose room is a little bit more generic of the space. It doesn't, because it wants to solve a lot of different problems. Seating for congregate dining. Behind me is a commercial kitchen with walk-in coolers and operations to serve a number of people, as well as to make this room, the gym, and other spaces in here an emergency shelter should you have a storm, an ice storm, power outage, any type of shelter function that the fire department may need for the community can be served, because you have this, you have the kitchen, and you have a shower facility. The multi-purpose room can be divided into 2 smaller rooms. The tables can be stored away in storage rooms. It can be a dance room. It's 2,350 square feet. 2 of these. So half of this room is this half. The other half is another size of the space. Right.
Thank you, Noel. So I'm going to talk a little bit about project costs, and I'll tell you right off the bat, we don't have the costs, specific costs for this project yet. They're currently with the estimating departments. We expect to have those estimates, the initial estimates, done by the end of this week. Then there's a period of reconciliation, working through the budgets, and by the time we get to the next public forum, we'll have a set budget for the project. But as we've heard about all the wonderful things this evening, you know, you've heard about the needs of the community, the changing demographics, the importance of having social connections within a community, not only for personal health, but also for community's health and even economic impacts. And we've heard about all the great programs that are offered, the experienced staff that you're very fortunate to have, that works very well together and has experience with these types of facilities. And then, of course, Joel just walked you through the vision for this new facility and how all that gets tied together. Of course, there is a price tag associated with that. And so I want to help bring understanding to what types of costs we're looking at and how those are put together. So what I'm going to walk you through is an understanding of what project costs really are. Sometimes we'll hear people say, well, this community did this project and it cost this amount, or we had something similar in another community. And it's important to really understand these in order to be able to compare apples to apples. So if we get started here, we have a few different factors that go into the project cost. So the first is you have the building components. And the clicker doesn't. Trying to click through here. Whoops, maybe I clicked too much. Okay, well, nevertheless, now there's. So you can see all these different pieces that go into a facility like this. Those can be broken up into different segments. First of all, when we put together the costs for all of these different pieces, those costs are derived from the labor and materials that each of the subcontractors need to execute that line of work. On top of that, they have overhead costs. Sometimes there's also subcontracted work, and then there's a profit. So all of those costs get rolled up into each of these segments for the building. And that's how we start to build the costs for this project. We have the same type of thing for the site, but let me, sorry, I'm just having trouble with the clicker. Okay. So what I wanted to show here is that you can kind of break up these individual costs into larger pieces. Core building, the remaining building, the systems, and finishes. And what's interesting is that if you walk into a facility, you know, you're going to notice the finishes, maybe the light fixtures, but so much of what goes into a building is hidden. And that's really how these costs get built. So the systems costs nowadays are a significant part of building costs. And that's because we've had a lot of changes in building codes and technologies. We have a much higher degree of comfort in our buildings with temperature control, lighting, and so forth. So we have a similar situation when we look at the site. And that's something that a lot of people don't think about. You know, they think about, okay, you're constructing this building, what does that cost? But there's also costs that go into developing a site. And clicking.
Just bring that computer over here.
Yeah, try that.
Drive it, so.
Try to go through it.
We're getting there. So with the site components, you can see the different pieces there. And again, it's the same type of setup. So we have the subcontractors that are out buying material, providing labor. There's some profit built in, and that goes into each of these categories. And then these also can be broken up into smaller segments. You have the initial preparation work, then you have the pathways, utilities, and then also the finishes. And in the case of the site, the finishes we're talking about are your plant materials, benches, exercise equipment, maybe, things like that. And once again, if you look at, so the way we put together these percentages is they are representative of similar types of projects. So this is very specific to this type of work. So once again, it's really only about 10% of these costs that are really visible. A lot of these things are happening under the ground, or we have to make maybe roadway improvements just to allow the traffic to get to those sites. So all of those are factors that go into understanding what actually goes into these costs. So you take all these individual costs, and those are what form the individual pieces of the bid for the subcontractors. But then there are additional costs that go into a project on top of that, because you need to have a general contracting company that can oversee the work of all these different trades, coordinate those activities, and also provide for certain equipment and operations for that work to be executed. So we start to add those costs then to these. We have the general conditions and general requirements, and those you could think of as the materials and the labor for the general contractor. Then there's also bonds and insurance, and that's really a very important piece, especially for public projects, because it protects the tax dollars. Construction projects are very complicated, and it's honestly not usual for things to go wrong. We make plans for that. And one of them is to make sure that there's insurance and bonding in case anything happens to something on the site, or even one of these companies that is contracted to do work. Things happen where people go out of business, they have different difficulties, and they can no longer perform the work. This protects us by enabling others to come in and do that work without additional cost. Permit fees, which on this project would not be very high, and then finally some profit. So all of those costs then add up to the total construction costs. But when we're putting together a budget, it really doesn't end there, because those total construction costs are something for the future. And we have to consider that at this point in the project, we're still working through the design. So you've seen the beautiful renderings and the floor plans, but there are thousands of decisions more that need to be made. So we have to allow a contingency on those costs so that as we move forward during the design period, we can make sure that all those costs are captured into the budget. So we add a certain amount of contingency to the total construction cost. And then the other very significant factor that we need to account for is escalation. So this is important when you're looking at projects that were done even recently, maybe a project that was done last year. When we put together the budget for these costs, we're not looking at what the cost would be today. We're looking at what the cost will be years from now when we're actually building. So we have to come to terms with what we believe that escalation costs would be. And there are many factors that drive escalation. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. So that will give us the total estimated construction costs. But in addition to the actual costs for the labor and material for the building, there's a lot of other costs that need to be factored in. We heard before how the project has been 10 years in the planning. We've seen the design work that BH+A was putting together. And those are some of the, what we call soft costs that go into this. So just slow. So here you can see how we take the estimated construction costs, that's the gray section that we were just looking at, and on top of that, we need to add costs for the architect, for the design fees, for the project management, for lots of miscellaneous fees that the owner will have, things like moving costs, maybe some costs for testing that needs to be done to ensure that the construction work meets the certain standards that are provided for. And then we also have, you can see that purple is a healthy amount of contingency. And as I said before, every construction project that I've ever heard of has issues that come up from time to time. It can be things that were misunderstood in the design documents. It could be things that were discovered in the ground once we start digging that nobody knew were there. So in order to protect the public and protect your funds, we have to build in a certain amount of contingency for those things. In addition to those construction contingencies, we also have owner contingencies built in. That helps to account for changes that the town might want to incur. So we're planning something for years in the future. It's possible that things happen within the town that would desire some change to the project. Usually they're minor, but those are things that definitely come up. So we have contingencies built in for those as well. That then gets us to the total estimated project costs. So as I said before, when we look at projects that have happened in other communities or similar types of projects, there are a lot of different numbers that get floated around. And in order to have an apples to apples comparison, we need to really dive into what those numbers are. So you might be talking about a project that was a smaller project, a $10 million or a $40 million project cost. It could be constructed in 2001 or 2030. Maybe it's a large facility, maybe it's a small facility. Maybe you're talking about the estimated cost, or maybe it was the actual cost of the project. It could have been a renovation only, not building as much, or it could have been new construction. Maybe the community that built it very bare bones, or maybe they were building something, same type of facility, but it was more of a high-end facility. They may have had a very simple site to work with, or they may have had a more complicated site that involved more groundwork or greater costs and utilities. So we went through the site selection process for this project, and I think as was said earlier, we had unanimous support for the Simons Way. It's a great site for the project, but one of the things that we do have with this particular site is we have some more challenging ground conditions that we need to deal with. Yeah, so that adds some complications to the site. So again, if you're comparing one project in one town versus another town, those are things that we need to consider. So lots of significant variables. So what we've done is we've gone through and looked at a number of projects in other communities. I don't know what's happening here. So we've looked at a number of projects in other communities, over a dozen, and compared projects for those, compared costs for those different projects. And it's all on the computer. But what we did is we worked to eliminate all those variables that I just went through and come up with similar total project costs, and then escalated those out to a similar time frame. And once we did that, we were able to kind of provide a benchmark on what we think the project costs would be for this project. So what we found is that the first thing is when we looked at renovation only, we came up with costs of $640 to $988 per square feet. The lower end of that was for projects that were constructed before COVID. When we looked at the new construction cost, which is what we're dealing with on this project, we had costs of $666 to $1,406 per square foot. Again, the lower end of those costs were before COVID. So we tried to narrow it down further. We looked at only the new construction projects that were post-COVID, and then also focus in on buildings that were of similar size, because a smaller building is going to have a higher price per square foot because of the efficiency, something that Joel was mentioning earlier, versus a larger building. So we try to get ones that were closest. When we did so, we came up with a cost per square foot of $870 to $1,227 per square foot. So all of that is based on similar types of buildings in over a dozen communities that we looked at in this area, and then with adjustments that were being made for when they were built, the size of the facility, and whether it was pre or post COVID. So that range that I just gave you did not address the site differences, because we didn't have that information for all these different projects. So I would say for Reading, we'd probably be a little bit on towards the higher end of that range. So once we applied that to a 28,000 square foot building, which is what the current design calls for, that gave us a range of 26.8 to 34.4 million. So again, that's not a cost estimate for this particular project yet. We're still working through those details. But what that tells us is, if we look at a dozen projects that were done in communities near here, where they were also constructing a senior center or a community center, and they had a similar type of square footage, what could we expect if they were going to be building those projects at the same time? So I know it's a lot of numbers and it can be very complicated, but I hope that that helps kind of bridge that gap in understanding into how we get to these project costs, and also how they compare from one town to the next. So unfortunately, I still don't have any slides. But another thing that I wanted to point out is I talked before about how we need to look at escalation. And I have a nice little chart that you probably won't be able to see, but I'll just hold it up anyway.
The inflation chart? Oh.
So what this basically shows us is, this goes back to 1915 up until now. And it shows us that very early on, prices were pretty flat, but that was kind of before all of our time here. Then they started to increase, and what we've seen throughout our careers and working is that we've had pretty much a steady increase in inflation year after year after year. But if you look all the way to the right, what you'll see is that inflation has spiked significantly. So, of course, that affects the project costs. Why does that happen? Well, I mentioned COVID as one factor before, but there are other things that roll into those types of inflationary increases as well. Natural disasters have an impact on that. The more wildfires and earthquakes there are, the more the costs go up. Not necessarily because there's a shortage of, materials directly from that earthquake, but all those areas need to be rebuilt, right? So the more people that are building, the more demand there is for materials, costs go up, right? Supply and demand, basic economics. Political changes can also impact that. That's something that we're looking now with the recent political changes. There's been a lot of talk about tariffs. How is that going to factor in? So those are things that we need to think about. So this is something that we do within our company to help communities such as yourself protect themselves as they go through these projects and to plan accordingly. We look at the large-scale impacts that we have for costs, but we also look at more regional impacts. So this graph here shows a lot of the regional impacts that would be affecting pricing for this type of project. and I'll just point out a few. One of the issues we have here that have kept prices somewhat higher is the limited amount of labor in the trades. So that's something that started really a long time ago, where fewer and fewer people were taking that path in life. And now that the people that have been working in those fields are older and retiring, we have labor shortages, and that's driving up the price for labor. There's also still a pretty high demand for building projects in this area. You've probably seen a lot of construction projects here locally. Also, if you go into Boston, lots of high-rises. That again has an impact on construction costs. And then also local legislation, that could be things like our energy codes. So we have the Stretch Energy Code that's been adopted here in Reading. So that provides for more energy efficient buildings. But those are things that have a higher price tag associated with them. So those are some of the regional costs. As I said, we do this as a company worldwide, but we're based here locally. And we have a lot of information on our website that people can look up if they're curious to better understand these things. So that's kind of it for costs. I just also wanted to point out again the website. We talked about this a little bit in the last public forum. We strongly encourage all of you to continue to provide feedback. We have been getting a lot of comments. We have a whole FAQ section now on the website that's been updated. And as you heard early in the meeting, we have added some even more public outreach meetings. So in addition to the 3 main forums that we've had planned for the projects, which are all in the evenings, we've added meetings both in the morning, in the afternoon, so that other people can attend that maybe couldn't make this time period. So going to the website, readingma.gov/recal, you can find all the materials that we've had on the project to date, even the recording from tonight, the presentation materials, all of those are available to you. So please feel free to go there, check those out, talk to your community members. I believe, I don't live in Reading, okay, but I think it's very exciting what you're doing. I think it's something that is very important for a community. We've had a lot of setbacks since COVID with isolation within the community. And I think in order for a community to thrive, we have to build those relationships. And a community center is a great place for that. So I will turn it over, I guess, maybe to Jane or Matt to field questions.
I'm on Zoom and Jane's in the room.
We have both options here. We do ask that folks, if you have your questions, can come up to the podium and ask them from here. We got one question. Come on up, Nancy.
I actually don't have a question.
Comments are also welcome.
Yes.
My comments will be very familiar for the past 5 years. So, Nancy Doctor, Pearl Street, and a Precinct 1 town meeting member.
It's not on.
Okay.
It's on for RCC.
Oh, okay. So I'll talk to you all then. Okay. Nancy Doctor, Pearl Street, resident and town meeting member. And I would very much like to support a senior center, but this isn't a senior center. A senior center is just one third of this project. The other third is meeting the needs for town space and recreation space. And I don't fault trying to put all of that together into one project. My concern, though, in the overview, what was left out was Bob J. Burns, back in January of 2019, invited a state expert to come and speak to the town, the select board. I think you can probably find it still on RCTV, to talk about the need for a senior center. And the man, Emmett, and I'm going to mess up the last name, I can spell it, but I won't. But he was considered a state expert, 44 years of expertise in senior care project management. And the takeaway was multi-generational centers do not work with seniors. In the earlier presentation that was given earlier in January, Mark, you did have a survey up that showed none of the seniors in our town actually wanted to have a multi-generational center. But I think the comment was half of everybody else wanted a community center. So this isn't really addressing what the seniors want. And so I think you need to consider that because the burden of this cost is going to be placed on the seniors. And people have been giving me numbers. Well, the average increase in Social Security over the last 10 years is 2.6. Now, some years it's a little more, some years it's a little less. That translates to about $45, $50 extra a month. The rate of inflation from last January is 2.9. If any of you have been following budget meetings, I think, and correct me if I'm mistaken, but I think the town's budget was an increase of 3.6, school is 3.9. So we're heading for a need for an override, probably in the next year or two, just to have level services. And I think we really need to consider what that's going to look like for our seniors. I think the building is beautiful. I think all of the endeavors are admirable, but I have to really think about who's going to be carrying the burden of this, which is our seniors. And given that they don't want a community center, and a couple of you have referenced the concerns that you have already heard from your seniors, and the cost, I would like to support a senior center, but I can't in good conscience support this project. And I wish it could be a senior center. Thank you.
Nancy? Another Nancy?
Hi, my name is Nancy Zemlak, and I'm chair of the Council on Aging here in Reading. And I would like to say that this process, the Council on Aging has been involved in this process since ReCalc was formed at the end of 2021. We have been strong partners with this process as it's evolved over the past few years. And we have worked very, very hard with the other volunteers on the committee to make sure that the interests of the seniors are recognized and are taken into account. And I respectfully have to disagree with Ms. Doxer that the seniors do not want this type of building. I think the way that we have collaborated with the design and with the departments and with the towns, that what we have come up with is a very good, it's not a compromise. I don't want to call it a compromise. It is going to properly serve the seniors because they're losing this building. They are not going to have this building anymore. So they are moving to a new building. And the space in the new building is going to be dedicated, spaces in the new building is going to be dedicated to senior activities and senior programs. And that is a very, very important part of the project to recognize. Yes, recreation is involved and veterans is involved, but the primary goal that was recognized and written in the final report of ReCalc was to take care of the current deficiencies for the seniors here in Reading. And we have to say that we think that this has accomplished it. I mean, a lot of people will ask, why are you putting a gym in this building? Well, there are a lot of seniors out there now and that are in their younger 60s. And you can't look at seniors as a cohesive group. There are younger seniors, there are mid-seniors, and there are older seniors. And each one of those groups requires a different set of what do I want to say? Programs in the building. Thank you. And I support this building. We have worked very hard to make sure that it will serve and service the needs of the seniors. Cost, I can't say anything about cost. I have no idea what the impact is going to be and what it ultimately is going to cost and who is going to take on the burden of that cost. We really can't talk about that until March, until we have more definitive figures in our notebook. We really can't talk about that. But I would say moving forward that this building is going to serve as a benefit for Reading, and it's going to bring together communities of people, including the seniors, and the seniors actually are the priority in this building. But it is going to be available for other age groups. So, and the town is working on an operations plan that is going to take that into account. So anyways, that's what I wanted to say.
Just to clarify, to respect with Mark and Linda, my last name is Doctor.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thanks. So, folks, another thing to think about is it was alluded to a little bit in the presentation, but maybe not as strongly as it could be. In the next few years, almost 30% of the population of this community is going to be age 60 plus. It's not just Reading, it's a change that's going on. It's a demographic change that's going on in this country, maybe other parts of the world also. The fact of the matter is there are lots of folks who don't have kids in the schools, either never did or don't anymore, and they're in a pocket where right now we're not able to serve them completely. We have waiting lines already for programs that exist. We're not able to do all the outreach to what I think you call younger seniors in some cases also. There are a lot of needs that we're trying to accommodate here for this community. But think about it, if you're not already in this 60 plus category, if your kids are through the schools, the trend is you want to stay here because it's a great place to live. That's what it is. You're going to be in that pocket of 60 plus at some point. And the question is, how well do you want the community to be able to serve you with the different things? Programs, activities, having a gym, having a walking track so that you can walk around. The ability to have this facility open 24/7 is an exaggeration, but the ability to serve other parts of the community in other hours, other times, other activities. That's the opportunity that you have here. In my opinion, there are two projects coming forward. One is going to be this center, the other is going to be a new Killam School. Those are the priorities that your elected boards, town staff are bringing forward to the community to evaluate. That's what we're suggesting are the highest priorities for this community, to serve the biggest parts of its population.
Thank you. I understand that Chris would like to say a word, but if somebody has another question or comment, please come up to the podium. Pass the mic.
Thank you very much. I just really want to make sure everyone keeps in mind. I know we've been doing things over a long period of time. I just ran the statistics, and you have to keep in mind right now, folks who are in this building pre-pandemic, let's say 2018, 2019, the interactions were totaling around 18,000, pushing around 20,000 interactions. Right now, we're pushing 40,000 interactions. So I do ask that you keep that in mind of the growth that we're having. So we did collect a lot of good information pre-pandemic, but you have to keep in mind that we are in a different time right now, in a different situation. And the information has changed over the years. You know, if we were still staying at 17,542 interactions, that would be one thing. But right now, we're pushing 38,000 interactions just with elder services alone. So regardless of what the plan was, even if it was just for a senior center, we need the space. And I asked so we can be able to cater and reach, you know, our older adult population. And then to strengthen that and to be able to reach more with recreation on one side and veteran services on the other side, to make sure not just, I mean, yes, we're going to focus on 60 plus, but you got to remember, we're still reaching only a fraction. It's a small fraction, even at 38,000 interactions. And we're going to continue growing that, and I have no doubt that we will. So please keep that in mind. 2018, 2019, 17,542 interactions. We're going to be pushing in another year about 40,000 interactions. Thank you.
Any other questions?
What other information would folks be interested in seeing? Other questions you might have that you'd like to hear more about?
Are there any grant programs in the town pursuing to help offset the cost?
So you asked if there are other grant programs that the town is pursuing to offset the cost. Is that correct? My understanding right now is there are not any grant programs available at the state level to help offset these costs. So unlike the school project, which has the MSBA providing a substantial grant for the building of that project, the state does not offer any grant programs of a similar scale or even a smaller scale for municipal side projects. It's just for schools. Anything else?
How about average cost per household at $30 million?
We have not calculated that yet. So that'll be coming out once this project is currently in cost estimation. And when those figures come back,
Can't you just use a figure of 30 million? What's the difference between 26 and 34?
So no, I wouldn't do that. First of all, that would be something that our finance director would do, Sharon Engstrom, and she spoke at our first public forum in December and kind of gave a little bit of color to what the whys and the wherefores, but you have to figure out how many years you're going to borrow, what the coupon rate, what the interest rate is going to be on that project, and then you can get a valuation per 100,000. And we will give that number to all of you, to the residents. We'll put that information out. We'll do the same thing with the Killam School project, so people will have a really good sense of what they individually would be expecting to pay if the project passed. And so we'll put all of that granularity on the website. And we'll be sure to make sure that information goes out to folks. So it's a good question, it's an important question. This project is not there yet, but we anticipate probably a couple of weeks we'll have that information. Is that about right, Brian? Joel?
Yeah, we'll have it by our March forum.
We'll have it by our March forum, and we'll have some handouts. There are some leave behinds here that you can take, but they don't look at the cost specific yet. So it's a really important question. They have to go through the design process first, through the schematic design, to have a robust enough design that the cost estimators can estimate for us very clearly and give us a good number that we can then count on when we bring it forward to town meeting and to the voters. Brian, do you have anything you want to add on that, or is that, did I get that?
Yeah, good.
That was good.
Yeah. I think you pretty much covered it. The other thing that I would say is, we're going through the estimating process, as Jane just mentioned, and I think maybe Jenna mentioned, the qualifications of the Permanent Building Committee, which are really incredible. So one of the things that we're also doing now is doing a review of the design, and we're getting feedback from the building committee members. And our intention is, when we get the initial cost estimates back, that we're also going to work through those to find the most cost-effective decisions that can be made to enable us to move forward with the building project that protects the tax dollars as much as possible. So it's not just a matter of saying, okay, this is what we want, this is what it's going to cost. It goes through a great deal of scrutiny to determine what are really the best decisions on this particular project and how are they going to impact the cost, and do we go in that direction or do we not go in that direction? And those are the decisions that the Permanent Building Committee will make. And we'll be doing that in the few weeks after we get the cost estimates back, and as we then put together the final budget for the project. Any other questions or comments?
I just said it was a pickleball, that it's separate. The pickleball is separate than.
Is that?
That's my question.
Is the pickleball a separate project?
Yeah.
That's your question. Yes, it is a separate project. That's correct. So through the feasibility design process, Joel and the folks at BH+A determined that pickleball could be an option for this location. Our pickleball community had previously planned to have, I think the town had planned to do 4 courts over at the Birch Meadow complex when we're doing our phase 2 project, which is about to start happening, I think, in July. Thank you, July, Jim. So we took those pickleball courts off that project because of the noise factor, and pickleball community was very understanding about that. They came to the town when we were in feasibility for ReCal and said, we want to do some private fundraising to see if we can contribute to this project. Is it something that we could do? And so we reviewed that internally with staff, with the design team, and determined that if we took that portion of the project off the ReCal project, but kept the same designers and the same civil engineering firm, landscape firm, all of that, the same groups but a separate contract, we could possibly bring that project forward separately, and it would have some private fundraising that would go with it. We could contribute some town funds that are already in our operational budget that's designated from the recreation capital plan. And then we would bring to town meeting the remaining portion. So if you remember, last fall, the select board voted to designate about $80,000 in remaining ARPA funds for the purpose of the design. And through that design process, which is happening concurrently, we will have a figure that we can then bring forward to town meeting, but it will not be included in the debt exclusion. We will not be going forward to raise taxes, outside of the normal borrowing that we do. So a debt exclusion is a different process. And so the ReCal project and the Killam School project will both be brought forward as a debt exclusions. They will have to go to town meeting to authorize the borrowing, and then they will have to go to a vote of the electorate to approve the debt exclusion, that tax increase. So the pickleball project, to answer your question, but I threw a whole lot else in there, is a separate project. It will come forward to town meeting, and those costs will be coming in also in a few weeks, and we'll have those to present later, but it's not part of the RECAL project.
So even the building the building could, they literally could advance that pickleball.
Yes, that project could happen whether or not RECAL passes. RECAL can happen whether or not pickleball passes. They are separate projects, and so we
I
have.
have a separate warrant article just for pickleball on the town meeting warrant, so.
Thank you,
It's totally separate articles, separate voting.
Thanks, Matt.
There
It's
is-
simple. It's simple.
There's an opportunity for pickleball opportunities.
The indoor pickleball. That is right. There is an opportunity for indoor pickleball with the RECAL project. Thank you, Pat Tompkins, the chair of the Permanent Building Committee. Other questions? You're welcome, if there are no more questions, to mill about and look at the images around the room. These images are also on the website. High-resolution images are already up, and so this meeting will also be posted to the website tomorrow, so you can go back and look at it. Oh, and we need to, for a couple of committees, need to adjourn their public meeting. Matt, did you have any? Matt,
Yeah,
anything else you wanted to add?
No, good questions. A lot was covered tonight. I wanted to thank everybody for coming. Like we said, we have one more forum coming up in March that will be very informative because it sounds like we'll have the actual numbers that people want or close to it at that time. I know that a lot of people are eager to have those numbers on both the Killen project and the RECAL project, and with good reason, and we want to provide those. We just want to make sure they're accurate. There's a lot of legal and financial nuance to them, and so we want to be as accurate as possible, and that's why we've been able to operate those numbers correct. So, but thank you everybody for coming. We have the lunch and learn later this week, and then in March we'll have the third and final forum and coffee chat after that.
And just, we had a question about what's the website. If you go to the website, did you find it?
No, I just asked how.
It will be tomorrow. It will be tomorrow. It will be on the website, and that's readingma.gov/recal. Which you're in the meeting.
Thank you, communications.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the permanent building committee. Second. John Coop? Yes. Nancy Toomey?
Yes.
Nancy Zimmer? Yes. John Thompson? Yes. Pat Tompkins, yes. Motion passed. Chris?
We're all set.
We'll be here if folks want to ask us questions or, you're welcome to come and do some one-on-one conversations. Thank you